For most of human history, we were not alone. If you could travel back 50,000 years, you wouldn't find a world populated by only one kind of human. You would find several. Some looked surprisingly similar to us. Others were shorter, stronger, and adapted to environments that would be almost impossible for modern humans to survive. And then there was Homo sapiens, us. Today, we're the only human species left. But why? What happened to everyone else? To understand that story, we have to go back nearly 2 million years. Meet Homo erectus. Homo erectus appeared around 2 million years ago, long before modern humans existed. They had long legs, relatively short arms, and bodies built for walking and running across open landscapes. They were also among the first humans to leave Africa and spread into other parts of the world. They made stone tools. They controlled fire. And they survived in environments completely different from where their ancestors evolved. For almost 2 million years, Homo erectus survived. Think about that. Every city, every empire, every modern technology we have created represents only a tiny moment compared with their existence. But eventually, their world changed. Their populations became smaller. Their environments changed. And their access to resources became more limited. The last known Homo erectus fossils are around 110,000 years old. After surviving for nearly 2 million years, they disappeared. But they weren't the only ones. Then came the Neanderthals. For decades, Neanderthals were portrayed as stupid, primitive cavemen. But science has completely changed that picture. Neanderthals were powerful, intelligent humans, adapted to harsh environments. They had strong bodies, large brains. They controlled fire, created tools, hunted dangerous animals, and may have cared for injured members of their communities. They survived across Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. Then, around 45,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began entering their world. For thousands of years, the two species lived alongside each other, and something remarkable happened. They had children together. Modern humans outside Africa still carry some Neanderthal DNA. So the Neanderthals didn't completely disappear from our story. Part of them is still inside us. But as populations declined, climate changed, and competition for resources increased. Neanderthal numbers became smaller and more isolated. Around 40,000 years ago, they disappeared from the fossil record. Next comes one of the strangest human species ever discovered, the Denisovans. Scientists first discovered them from a tiny finger bone, found inside a cave in Siberia. The bone was incredibly small, but its DNA revealed something extraordinary. It belonged to a previously unknown human group. The Denisovans left behind very few fossils, yet their genetic legacy is surprisingly large. Some populations in Asia and Oceania carry Denisovan ancestry, and one Denisovan gene helps modern Tibetans survive at extremely high altitudes, where oxygen levels are dangerously low. A human grow, up we can barely see in the fossil record, is still influencing how people live today. Then there was Homo floresiensis. Imagine, a human species only about 1 meter tall. That's roughly 3 feet. Homo floresiensis lived on the Indonesian island of Flores alongside giant animals, including Komodo dragons and dwarf elephants. Their small bodies may have been the result of thousands of years of isolation on an island. They survived for a surprisingly long time. But eventually, they disappeared too. And that brings us to the biggest question. Why are we the only humans left? Was Homo sapiens simply smarter? Not necessarily. Neanderthals were intelligent. Denisovans adapted to extreme environments. Homo erectus survived for nearly 2 million years. And Homo floresiensis survived on an isolated island for thousands of years. So intelligence alone doesn't explain our survival. One possibility is that Homo sapiens had something different: connections. We didn't just live in groups. We built networks between groups. Knowledge could travel. Tools could improve. Survival strategies could spread from one community to another. If one group discovered a better way to hunt, survive a harsh winter, or find food, that knowledge didn't necessarily disappear when the group disappeared. It could be passed on. And that may have changed everything. Climate, geography, population size, competition, and simple luck probably mattered too. We weren't necessarily destined to become the last humans. We may simply have been in the right place, at the right time, with the right combination of advantages. The other human species weren't failed versions of us. They were different kinds of humans. They had their own bodies, their own environments, their own survival strategies, and their own stories. Homo erectus survived for almost 2 million years. Neanderthals survived hundreds of thousands of years. Denisovans left behind a tiny fossil record, but a lasting genetic legacy. And Homo floresiensis showed just how strange human evolution could become. For most of human history, we were only one branch of a much larger human family. Today, we're the only branch left. And perhaps the strangest part isn't that they disappeared. It's that somehow we didn't. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to FactVerse Official for more fascinating stories about human evolution, history, science, and the mysteries of our past.